Jake Tapper, CNN's Jake Tapper, owes Lara Trump an apology for this because Lara effectively said, you know what? His cognitive ability is declining. I think that's very obvious. She was basically, telling everyone the obvious. I mean, we could all see it. Everybody knew it, but you weren't allowed to say this. And he went nuts on her. He owes her an apology, seriously, for this one. Take a look.
Every time he comes on stage or they turn to him, I'm like, Joe, can you get it out? Let's get the words out, Joe. You kind of feel bad for him.
How do you think it makes little kids with stutters feel when they see you make a comment like that?
First and foremost, I had no idea that Joe Biden ever suffered from a stutter. I think what we see on stage with Joe Biden, Jake, is very clearly a cognitive decline.
Okay.
That's what I'm referring to. It makes me uncomfortable
you have
to watch somebody on stage search for
that's so amazing. It's so amazing to me that
try and figure out an answer.
A cognitive decline.
Well, when you're trying to tell me that what I was suggesting was
I think that you were mocking his stutter. Yeah, I think you were mocking his stutter, and I think you have absolutely no standing to diagnose somebody's cognitive decline. I would think that somebody in the Trump family would be more sensitive to people who do not have medical licenses diagnosing politicians from afar. Plenty of people have diagnosed your father from afar, and I'm sure it offends you. Your father-in-law from afar. I'm sure it offends you. You don't have any standing to say.
I'm not diagnosing him. What I'm saying, Jake,
you just talked
is
about
that
a cognitive decline.
That Joe Biden
I have
is
one last question for you, Lara. You can't
times on stage, and it's very concerning to a lot of people that this could be the leader of the free world.
Okay.
That is all I'm saying. I genuinely feel sorry for Joe Biden.
I appreciate it. I'm sure.
You notice he's also calling her Laura instead of Lara. I mean, you can't do that with Kamala, right? If you say Kamala or whatever, oh, you're in all kinds of trouble. But it's perfectly fine to call Lara by the wrong name if you're Jake Tapper. He owes her an apology. He really does, because just a few months later, he was out scolding the American public for not believing just how bad a shape one Joe Biden was in. Remember?
There is a pattern, discernible pattern, of Democratic officials seemingly trying to convince you, the public, to not believe what you saw and what you heard with your eyes and with your ears on Thursday night.
What I've been able to do with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare, the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
Democratic officials have tried to spin this in many ways. They said President Biden just had a cold. They said it was just one off night, akin to when President Obama in 2012 was rusty and seemed a little huffy. But behind the scenes, make no mistake, most Democratic officials witnessed the same shocking spectacle that you did. The difficulty that the presumptive Democratic nominee, the current president of the United States, had just articulating his basic thoughts during the 90 minutes of the debate. The spinning is all very reminiscent of the George Orwell quote from the book 1984 that I invoked 5 years ago for a different situation and a different president. It's relevant again today. Quote, "The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command." We're not going to do that today on The Lead. We're going to talk honestly and frankly about all of this with a number of individuals who see it for what it is. We're going to talk to some journalists and some Democrats.
Okay, so now finally, Lara Trump can't say it, but once Jake sees it with his own eyes, once Obama and David Axelrod and David Plouffe and the rest of the establishment says, you know what, we can't really run Joe because he's just not there anymore, then he's okay to say it. But God forbid anyone else, from me to Lara to Donald Trump to anyone else, any streamer out there, you were just a cheap fake if you talked about his cognitive decline. I mean, look, I said it at the time, and I want to be thoughtful, and I'm a nice person, and I realize it's a huge accusation, right, to make. But sadly, I've seen this before in loved ones. And it was very evident what was going on. Anybody who's been dealing with that or has dealt with that in the past with a loved one recognized the signs. And it was all there for everybody else to see, but you guys were just clinging to he was somehow gonna make it. And you thought if you could just keep on telling yourselves, if you could just tell yourself we're going to get through this election, we'll hide him in the basement just like we did before, we'll pretend like everything's great and he's a nice guy and Donald Trump's bad. The orange man is bad. You can't vote for Trump because it's going to be the end of the country and the end of democracy. Hillary Clinton told you that. Whoopi Goldberg told you that. The rest of the ladies on The View told you that. Morning Joe told you that. CNN told you that. So if you don't believe that, well then clearly you got rocks in your head. But what's great is America didn't believe it. You know why? Because Americans actually, they go to the grocery store every week. They see the increases in their car insurance. They see the increases in their health insurance costs. They know how tough it is. They know what's going on. And they had fond memories. They were like, okay, maybe there's some mean tweets along the way, but guess what? Life was pretty good otherwise. Pre-March 2020, pre the shutdown of the economy, which was really something that I'll go back in time. I think the Democrats took an unfair advantage of. I called them out at the time for it. It was wrong what they were doing. They were over politicizing that in a way so that they could make everybody stay home. They scared everybody to death. Listen, I get it. And I lost loved ones in that tough time as well. So I want to be cautious how I say this, but I will say that the reaction was too much. It was too political and it wasn't smart. In other words, you need a strong economy to fight something like that. You got these idiots out there saying, oh, his legacy, Biden's legacy is going to be, like Chuck Schumer, this amazing, quote unquote, New Deal that he put through, the trillions of dollars in spending that we absolutely could not afford.